what do we have here? This is the Energetic Arms VOX S 30 caliber can, and that's what we're going to be talking about here today on the VSO Gun Channel. The Energetic Arms VOX S 762 suppressor. Now, I've seen a fair amount of these welded baffle cans roll through, and they're becoming more and more prevalent these days, but for anybody who's not tracking what I'm saying, you can see the individual weld lines here. And what that means is that the baffles themselves are the tube. And this is good from my perspective for a couple different reasons. Chief among those is efficiency. There's a lot more volume in this can than in a traditional tube and baffle can. The reason that is because normally these have a standardized outside diameter, and when you take a standardized outside diameter, put the thickness of a tube, and then put a bunch of baffles inside of it, you're evaporating your space fairly quickly, so these cans typically have a lot more volume. Now, the downside to welded baffle cans is they are not user serviceable. Obviously, they're welded together. Now, the upside to that is you get a lot more rigidity and strength out of the can. So a lot of times the damage that you see in traditional baffle cans most prevalently is not baffle strikes. More often than not, you see a compression of the blast baffle. So it's shaped like this, and then it literally flattens out, and what that causes is rattling. You will never have a welded baffle can rattle, and what that usually ends up doing is keep you from having baffle strikes even if you have compression of the blast baffle. I don't normally do packaging, but in this instance I think it's relevant because we have some goodies in here that are going to be important here in a second. So we have a nice phone case, and as you can see, that sucker slides right in there. It comes with a muzzle device that you can see I've already attached down here. And then a couple of tools that are going to be instrumental here in a second. So we have the wrench here, as well as the vice block. And this allows you to clamp the can right around here with the vice block and work on the front half there. And as you guys can see, we have a spanner for this component here, and a hexagonal piece right here for use like that. And that allows us to access the front here, because while this is a welded baffle can, we also have the integration of an optional wipe there on the front. And the way this works is we just go ahead and get it in there. I've gone ahead and pre-loosened this, guys, because it comes fairly tight, I must admit. And as you can see, this whole module comes off, and you use a 9/16 socket wrench right there and this tool, and you can get at that wipe to replace it. We're going to be testing this wipe here in a second. Now let's be serious here for a second, guys. The real reason I love welded baffle cans is because my job's super easy right now. I can't really show you any deeper than that because this thing's welded together, so I can't take it apart and show you guys. But what I can do is put all the specs on the screen over here for you guys that are interested in that. But I do have two more things that I wanted to touch on that I think are pertinent to this design that we should do right now before we get this thing all mucky and scratched up and stuff. Hold the phone. Do you guys see that? Zoom it in. A little bit closer. Resolve. Look at that shit. So right here, you can see at the base of the baffle stack, we have a band that has the serialized information on there. You can see that it is tacked on there. And so it is welded to the tube, but this is the serialized portion. So even if you were to do something insanely stupid, like say, send a 458 SOCOM round through this can, not suggested at all. I'm pretty sure that is not covered in the warranty, but it could be. I don't know if Energetic would cover that or not. As long as this is intact, as long as this is salvageable, this does not constitute a taxable transfer if you have to send this thing in for repairs. Now, the other thing that I think is very forward thinking is this thing can morph on the back side here to accept industry standard mounts. So ragged wipe. No wipe. All right, I'm going to go ahead and squat down here. We're down at the other end of the range, and I'm going to be looking at the monitor there, so I apologize for people that that irritates them, but I have to make sure that this is visible. So this is the unsuppressed, and this is cold bore, this guy here in the center, but we'll measure it anyway. So it's looking to me like we're going to go with approximately 1 inch there, and we'll go ahead and measure it without the cold bore deviation, 0.9. So this is for the ragged wipe, and as we can see, we're looking at right around 2 inches there, and I kind of expected this to be the case because the bullet is literally hitting something inconsistent on its way to the target. I expected some group expansion there. However, not really much point of impact shift here. We're still shooting pretty much to the right, pretty much in the same area approximately. So that's a plus. So this is what I'm talking about. This is our no wipe group, and as you can see, it's better than our unsuppressed group. And this is sometimes the case in a really well-regulated can. Sometimes it's better than even your best target crown because it's really controlling that gas flow as the bullet leaves the muzzle, and it can really do a good job of dialing in your accuracy, and this is case in point. And this is our fresh wipe group, and I was kind of expecting this to be the case. And as you guys can see, we're looking at right around the same group size as our starting group, right at 0.9. However, you can see that we have had an appreciable point of impact shift between the two. This is point of aim over here, and we've got some deviation, and that is to be expected. It's consistent deviation, so we're still grouping, but what we see here is basically that bullet hitting something that's disrupting its path, sending it off. Now, when we compare the fresh wipe to the ragged wipe, we can see that we can see how this becomes this. You see the similarities here. This one is tending towards this one, and that's just the physics of a bullet that hits something between where it's supposed to be. So the external ballistics are literally being disrupted by the wipe, which is to be expected. It's a trade-off between that max suppression potential, that elimination of first round pop, and accuracy. You cannot defeat the laws of physics. Alrighty guys, we are gearing up for our night test, and for anybody who isn't familiar with our night test, I'll have a link in the description box down below where you can find our full video synopsis on the process that we use for night testing of cans. But the quick Cliff Notes version of that video is that we're looking to see what the suppression potential of the device is, the flash suppression potential of the device is after dark. And whether you're a hog eradication specialist, a hunter of some kind that is hunting in the dark, looking perhaps to work on that invasive species population down south, or maybe you're somebody who's serving in an official capacity and you have to work under night vision, we want to have an idea of what that device's suppression potential is in total darkness, so that when you pull the bang switch the first time, you are not surprised. And for that, what we're going to be using, just like the rest of the testing, is this Stag 10. This is a semi-automatic 308, and what that gives us is both the muzzle report considerations as well as the port pop considerations. And for that also, what we're going to be doing is I have this stuff that I've been using for all the rest of the testing. This is Bore Buster 308, and I picked this stuff because I wanted something that was fairly hot so that we had the most conservative test pop possible. So if it'll suppress that stuff really well, then it will suppress your ball ammo even better. So for the VOX, we're going to have to build out the testing a little bit more than usual. Normally we just do a straight suppressed versus unsuppressed test and we're done with it. But because we have the wipe, we're going to do, just like some of the other testing, a no wipe, a clean wipe and a ragged wipe versus the unsuppressed shot to see how this thing does and what we do best on, say, a semi-automatic 308 after dark. All right, dark enough to start anyway. Unsuppressed. Ragged wipe. No wipe. You guys can see right there that there is no wipe in the end of that thing. No wipe. Fresh wipe coming your way. You can see that thing is brand spanking new. Well, I can tell you this, that the fresh wipe does increase the back pressure quite a bit. So what's it look like afterwards? A little bit of fuming, a little bit of gas coming out the end there. That's actually kind of neat. Alrighty guys, one final test. We've swapped back over to 300 blackout. We're going to be shooting the Fiocchi Exactas, the 220 grain subsonic stuff. They're rated for about 1,000 feet per second, but you know, it's kind of cold here, so I don't expect those kind of numbers today. But what I want to know is how much that wipe influences the end velocity, because I know that somebody on the internet's gonna ask about that. So we're gonna go ahead and do it real quick. We'll do no wipe versus a fresh wipe. Alrighty guys, back here at the vault room, and rather than do the standard run and gun finish that we would normally do for a video like this, I thought that we would kind of do a recap of the testing that we did on the VOX S. And the reason why is, I'll be honest and say that this is the first time I've ever done a test on a can that has an integrated wipe in it. And because of that, I went a little bit overboard on the analysis of the effects of the wipe. I think you guys can tell that by the way the video has proceeded thus far. And I just think it would be good to bring it into balance so you guys understand what the wipe gives you and what it takes from you. To that end, the statistics from our last test that we did, and as you guys can see, really as far as velocity difference is concerned, not really a big deal. At least not one that would be statistically significant, and there's a reason that I picked a subsonic 300 blackout, because if we're talking about a percentage of the bulk velocity, we would see the most appreciable effects from a round like that rather than shooting something like a full power 308 or a 5.56 round through it. So basically, not really important as far as what it's doing to our velocity is concerned. Now, what I will say about the wipe is if you're going to run this can on semi-automatic, then I would say that you should probably just skip the wipe. And the reason why is because it seals the can up, it provides extra back pressure, and what that is causing is an excess of port pop. Now, I'm going to say that it's still hearing safe, and it was hearing safe on all of the calibers that I tested on. However, it is getting a little bit uncomfortable on the 308 when we're talking about that excess back pressure, that excess gas being redirected back down the pipe to the shooter's ear. Now, that said, don't sell the wipe up the river just yet, because I think there are some specific instances where it does give you some things. Specifically speaking, if you're trying to eliminate that first round pop, it does a pretty good job of knocking down that first round pop relative to the can with no wipe. Now, during our night test, we also saw that the wipe does a pretty good job of cushioning down that flash. So it does help eliminate a little bit of that flash relative to the can without a wipe in it. And lastly, you see how this can's all dirty? Well, there's a reason I left it dirty, and that's because I was on the range doing some up drills. And I went to sling my rifle to go to my pistol, and one of my swivel studs broke. And what happened is the rifle took a dip in the mud. And the first thing to go into the mud was this can. You guys can see how deep it went in. And because it had the wipe in it, no mud got inside this can. And if it had been just about any other design besides having something with a wipe in the end there, all that mud would have basically filled the first chamber, and it could have caused a catastrophic failure of this can. So that is another thing that I do have to say that we just incidentally uncovered this afternoon. So I do think that there is a good reason to have the wipe in there for some of those applications. Now, the last thing I would say is that if you're not concerned about port pop, like if you're trying to be super ninja bolt action shooter type thing, then yeah, the wipe would be great for you, because you don't have to worry about those considerations, and it is going to further cut down that sound signature, if you will. Now, the last thing I will say is you don't really lose that much if you do want to take out the wipe on semi-automatic, because basically if you put that retainer back in there, you basically get a free extra baffle anyway, because you have that gap where the wipe would be. It's an oversized, overboard baffle, but at least there's something there. So you get that for free. So that is our look at the Energetic VOX. I had a great time testing this can. I think it's a very good design. I really like the elements that they've included in this thing, including the welded, ridiculously strong alloy that they made it out of, the integration of that ring that is the serialized portion that is separate from the actual body of the can that would normally be destroyed if something went bad, and of course the integration of industry standard capability for whatever type of mount that you guys are desiring to run. So whatever you've invested in for the rest of your cans, you have the ability to use that for this one as well. Now, that said, they do have a direct thread mount for those of you guys that are doing, like, I understand the precision rifle shooters may want to direct thread and hard mount and not be passing the can around to a whole bunch of different guns. Got it. That's available as well. I pass these things around to a crap ton of guns all the time. So having something like the dead air chemo mount is definitely a plus for me. I'm gonna go throw this thing in the ultrasonic cleaner, get all the muck out of it. Thank you guys for joining us here on the VSO Gun Channel, and hopefully we'll see you guys on a future video.